Hi, it's Alexis.
And Christian from Tiny House Expedition. And we built our tiny house way back in 2014.
With the help of friends and family, over 9 months of ups and downs and trial and error, it was all worth it in the end.
We built a cozy custom home of our own that led us to an adventure of a lifetime. And now we're working on a shuttle bus conversion.
In our DIY Tiny Home Build Stories series, we hope to inspire and empower you to take on your own build by yourself or with help.
I needed help. I definitely needed help.
Hi, I'm Bernadette.
I'm Jessica, and this is Margot, and this is our DIY tiny house in Austin, Texas. Yeah, I don't know when I really got into tiny homes. I'm sure it was HGTV like everyone else. I think I started to seriously entertain the idea of building a tiny home. I did study abroad a few times in law school, and on one of those trips, a girl from my law school had just built a tiny home with her dad, and we started talking. I'm like, oh my God, that's so cool. How did you do it? How much did it cost? She gave me all the details. And so when I returned from Malta that summer, I told my dad, I want to do this. And he was like, okay, whatever. Like, he didn't really take it seriously. And so I started collecting materials, like free materials from people very slowly. Like, I got a door, I got a dishwasher that we didn't end up using. And he was like, you're getting all this junk and you're putting it in my storage, and we can't do that. We're not actually building a house. And we got in that conversation of, you know, when I was your age, I bought a house. You put a down payment on a house that's more equitable, et cetera, et cetera. We have no skills. We don't know how to build a house. So I made a binder, a very thick binder, like this thick.
A full binder.
Of directions, of math, of all of these studies, like a budget, everything, of why this was a good idea. And it really came down to, I just graduated law school with a lot of debt. I had no idea where I wanted to end up. I still don't really know where I want to end up in terms of living, if I want to stay in Texas, and the idea of owning a home and not being able to have that freedom to move around as a young adult with no responsibilities was scary. And then going into more debt, and I put it to him this way, that I can put $20,000 down on a home and have a mortgage that I can't afford and not be able to have the freedom to move around. Or I could spend $20,000 and have a home and move it wherever I wanted and be done and not have a mortgage. And that plus the binder, he came back to me a few days later and he was like, okay, you've thought this through.
I get it.
We can do this. And we did it. My plan when starting the build was to be in this house for a very long time, like maybe 10 years or 15 years. And I wanted it to be like fully sustaining for an adult. And that meant washer and dryer, that meant full-size refrigerator, that meant a regular toilet. I wanted all the comforts of a regular home in a tiny home. And so I didn't just want to have a shower, because what if I had a hard day and I wanted a bath and I wanted to soak? So I wanted to make sure I had a bath for those purposes, and then when it's too cold outside, I can bathe my dog in here or whatever need be. So I didn't want to give up that luxury just because I was living in a tiny home. And so I found a bathtub that was almost full size, and as a short person, it's full size, and at a kind of like a restore situation, and it was perfect. So I went with that. A couple of the things that were requirements for me when designing the house, one was a peninsula in the kitchen. So I wanted the stove to be over here, just kind of flow nicely, have this side of the kitchen open. Another requirement was a pantry. Didn't work out the way I initially hoped it would, but we got this really nice cabinet from Target that serves as our pantry. I initially lived with him and my mom when I first graduated law school, when we started the build. And then eventually I got a job in Austin, so I moved. It took about
I thought it was 4.
3 or 4 years to actually finish building it, because almost all of it was out of pocket. So it was pretty slow build. And it was, my dad was just recently retired, so he was working at a chemical plant. And so it was when he was off is when he would work on it, and not every time, because it's not his house and it's not his life. So just when he could. We couldn't really do it in the summers because Texas is really hot. So just when he could, when I could come down, we would work on it. Because we started from a old trailer. We just bought a trailer. We started from like the ground up. So when we did the roof or built the frame, we had my cousins came out and helped us do that. Some of my dad's friends came out and helped. Our neighbor, I believe, was a retired electrician, so he came and helped with the electricity. And then at the end, it came down to a timeline of, we have 2 months to move into this house. And we had already canceled our lease in our apartment. So it was a really like crunch time, and we weren't sure if we were gonna finish. And so we hired a contractor to finish up the last couple things. My dad and I didn't really butt heads too much during the build. There was, in the planning process, because he understood this is my house, you know, you get the final say in things, but I used a software online to kind of design everything, and I wanted a few things, like requirements, and try to work those into the design. He's like, oh, we would be arguing about the way something was, and then have to go and write it, like draw it out, and we're like, oh, we're saying the same thing. So we understand each other, but we're just saying it in the different ways. So we did that a couple of times, but we figured it out. And then after that, it was kind of like defaulting to what my dad said, because I had the design plan and I wanted to look this way. Oh, we can do this. I've seen it online. I've seen how you DIY that. And there was a couple of things where he was like, no, that's not going to work, or we can't do that. And I was like, no, I know for sure we can. And this is how. And he'd be like, oh, okay. But for the most part, it was defaulting to my dad with a lot of stuff. And he'd be like, well, this is better for these reasons. I'm like, okay, sure, whatever you say. And, you know, some of those things we found out maybe we shouldn't have done it that way, but it's not that big of a deal. Like, we thought that the roof shape would give us more headspace. It didn't, but not a big deal. And we thought we got thicker or wider shiplap, but we didn't. Not a big deal. But some of the things we've had to replace. But for the most part, I defaulted to him. He has way more knowledge about these kind of things than I do. I think my grandpa was a contractor of some sort, so he learned a lot from him. But yeah, I don't really think there was much bickering. I think
it ended up being more about design choices and stuff. Like,
right.
We said we wanted to paint the house white inside, and he was like, why would you paint it white? And we're saying, you know, it opens up the space, and it's kind of our taste and things like that. And he was like, well, I guess so. Like, if you want to paint it white, we can paint it white. And so it just came down to, like, you know, aesthetic choices that he didn't understand, but he knew it was our house, so we got to make those choices.
And he'd always be like, well, this might cost a little more, but I think it's really going to make it extra secure. And I was like, okay, like, I don't want my house to fall apart, so that's totally fine.
Yeah,
but
you both had your strong suits, and you complimented each other.
Yeah.
It was, like, good memories.
Yeah. I think some of the biggest challenges during the build were
money.
Well, money, first of all. I started right out of law school, so I was not making any money. And because we wanted to do it in a way that I didn't go into more debt for the house, it took longer to do that. And then just that we didn't know how to build a house. And so there was a lot of things that my dad and I both saying, I don't know how to do this. You know, we have to figure this out, or asking for help and things like that.
In your tiny house Facebook group, you had to make connections with other people who built tiny houses specifically to say, well, this is how you do it in a regular house, but in tiny house you need specific expertise from people who've done it in the tiny house fashion.
Right. Yeah, and it was a lot of figuring things out like that. Like, luckily we did have some connections of people that were contractors, like family members or things like that, that came out and helped us out, and it was like, oh, that's solved. But it was a lot of just like the research base that was, you know, we didn't know how to do it, spending a long time researching it and then figuring that out. I think that would be the most difficult during the build. Learned a lot from YouTube and the internet and just figured it out. Figured most things out. Some things regretfully did wrong, but
yeah, we've had to troubleshoot things.
We've had to like fix things now, or we will have to fix things, but for the most part, we figured it out. And I mean, we have walls and
it works.
Yeah. The goal was to, because I've seen a lot of DIYs, and no shade, but you can tell they're DIYs. But I couldn't afford one of the prefab ones, and so I wanted to build a house that looked like we didn't build it. And I think we got a nice like medium between like a prefab and a DIY, and like I'm pretty proud of the way it turned out. So I think that's the most rewarding thing, is to be like, my dad did that, like my dad built this, and that's pretty great. And I helped. You know, I think that's the best part of it. My advice to someone that would want to do a DIY tiny house would be research, and to always plan for more than you expect. I built the house for me and my dog because I did not think that I would be in a relationship. Actually, I built it for me and a different dog, but yeah, I just planned it for be one person, and so the storage and the space itself, I would have increased it, just even with like, oh, well, what if?
Yeah, like logistics.
Yeah.
Of use of space.
Always over plan than under plan. I think that, and always, like, you know, everyone always says online, I do a lot of DIY projects still, and they're always saying measure twice, cut once. Mm-hmm. Measure like 4 times, cut once.
Yeah, that's the energy.
Yeah, and I think the kind of theme for my DIY is, it's not perfect, but it's better than it was, and it'll do. Our idea is that this is not our permanent house, and you know, this is like a means to an end, and eventually we'll probably use it as passive income for like Airbnb or rent it out or something. But I mean, the idea of DIY is to save money, so it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be professionally done, especially like, I'm a lawyer, I don't know anything about construction, so building it now, you just kind of have to lower your expectations in a way and be like, well, it looks good, but it's not perfect. So lower expectations and over plan would be my biggest tips for any DIYers, including timelines. I didn't expect it to take as long as it did.
In that regard, it is like building a house is like, you know, you always think you're going to be able to get this product, or you're going to be able to have this person come help you, or you're going to have enough money for this, and it turns out you have to wait a few months to make all those different aspects come together. So just plan, like, have your lease be able to be extended or whatever, wherever you're staying while you're building it.
And the like price of lumber went up a lot, and you know, the bills for plumbers aren't cheaper just because it's a tiny house necessarily, and things like that. Yeah, always overplan for timelines, for prices, for everything. It's better to be under budget than over, and things like that.
Hey, it's Alexis again.
And Christian from Tiny House Expedition. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.
And to watch the full tour of the DIY tiny home you just learned about, click over here.